it's Melissa from Melissa's Creations, and today we are going to make this adorable little see-through box. You can just barely see peeking through some delicious chocolates. And when we open the box, there are our chocolates inside. I have two, I think. Yes, there are two Ghirardelli chocolate squares in here, but it would fit about 4. This is a 2-inch by 2-inch box, so it's a nice square little box, and the focal point is this beautiful cutout on the lid. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. We are using the Eastern Medallions Thinlits dies, and the great thing about these dies is how versatile they are. And I really like that you can cut out detail on a shape without cutting out the entire shape itself. So these are circular Thinlits, and I didn't have to cut out a circle in order to get this on the lid. So these are the two Thinlits we are using today, and I love how they just nest together perfectly and make such a beautiful design. We're using a beautiful piece of Tranquil Tide cardstock today. Now this is one full sheet that measures 8.5 by 11. I'm going to start by cutting that in half at 5.5. And then I am going to rotate that and cut it at 5.5 again, so I have a square. So this square is going to be for the bottom of our box, and the lid for this project needs to be a little bit smaller. I don't want the lid to be as deep as the box is, so I think I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller than this example here. So instead of a 5.5-inch square, I am going to do 3.5 inches. One thing that I love about this box is how easy it is to adapt it to any size. I want a 2-inch box to fit my Ghirardelli chocolate squares. So I know I want a square of 2 inches to be in the middle. So what I'm going to do is find the center of this piece of cardstock. This is 5.5 inches wide, so I know my center is going to be at 2 3/4. So once you have your center, all you have to do is measure out an equal distance on each side. If I want my box to be 2 inches, I'm going to measure 1 inch to the left and 1 inch to the right of that middle measurement. So that would be 1 3/4. Back to center at 2 3/4, and then we're going to go to the right by 1 inch, so 3 3/4. Now that I have those two measurements, I'm going to recreate those two measurements on this side, so 1 3/4 and 3 3/4. And so far, that is the base of our box. Now we're going to apply the same principle to our lid. Our lid piece is 3.5 inches wide, and we want a 2-inch wide lid. So half of 3.5 is 1 3/4, and then we're going to measure out 1 inch to the left and 1 inch to the right. So 2 3/4. So we have 3/4 and 2 3/4. Rotate and repeat those measurements. 3/4 and 2 3/4. Okay, now I have my bone folder, and I'm going to crease all of those score lines that we made. I'm going to grab my paper snips, and I am going to cut up this score line on each of the 4 flaps. Okay, and then I'm going to rotate it and cut this. All right, once you have those flaps cut like that, then I'm going to angle the edges of those flaps and then cut those flaps in about half. Okay, so then we'll do this one. All right, so now your main box portion should look something like this. To assemble your box, we're going to flip it over and take some fast fuse. We're just going to run a little bit of fast fuse right next to that creased score line on each of the flaps. Okay, and then we're going to just simply fold them in and match up those corners. Now, if you want to do some stamping on your box before you adhere it to itself to make your box shape, that's when you would want to do your stamping, after you cut your flaps while your box is still flat. But we are just going to do a plain box today so that that cutout on the lid really shines through. Now, for the lid, I'm going to cut the flaps and then we're going to focus on the cutout in the center. So you are going to do this same thing, just cut up on those sides. And take a chunk off of the edges of each of the flaps. Let's cut a little wedge out. And you don't have to, but I just like to trim down those little flaps a little bit. All right, so now this is what our lid looks like. So now we can bring in our big shot. I have my magnetic platform here. Here is my lid. And here are my dies. I'm going to place those dies right in the center of that lid and line them up. Then I'm just going to run that through a few times to make sure that it cuts really well. I'm going to use my die brush that comes with this handy foam mat. And I'm going to carefully pop out my dies. And look at that, nice and clean. Looks like every piece came out with minimal effort. But to clean out my dies, I am going to use my die brush. And that gets those dies nice and clean. All right, time to assemble the lid. I'm going to do the same thing and put a little bit of fast fuse on each of those flaps. Now, there is a trick to lid building for your boxes. My lid is very snug on my box. Now, if you don't like how snug it is, sometimes if it's too snug, you'll get a little bit of gapping. Now, I don't necessarily mind, but if you do mind, make sure that when you are scoring your score lines, you add a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch on each side. That will allow you to have a better fitting lid that is not quite as tight. It'll be a little looser. So we're going to assemble our lid in the same fashion as our box. Because I didn't add the extra room for my lid to be a little bit looser, instead of snugging up the corners, I'm going to bring out the corners just a little bit. And that will allow my lid to fit a little looser. So just a tiny bit. I'm not doing too much. So then once you have your lid assembled, you can slip that right onto your box after you put all of your goodies in there. And there we go. Super fun and super cute. Let's go ahead and put a goodie in that box. There we go. Get that lid back on. And there it is. Thank you so much for joining me for this project today. I hope you enjoyed this cute little box tutorial. If you did, please give the video a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button so you can be notified of future videos, and leave me a comment. Let me know if you have made a box with these framelits yet, and if not, are you going to? I think it is just absolutely adorable. You can follow me on the web at melissascreations.com. You can click on shop now while you're there to get all of the supplies that you need to make this project today. Your support really helps me, and it allows me to continue making these videos that I hope you enjoy as much as I enjoy making. You can also follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/mcreations and at Instagram and Twitter with the handle @mcreations. Thanks so much, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day.